a scion of many worlds. Thank you? Jasper replies, unsure if that was an insult or a compliment. This was supposed to take several months to a year, Emmanuel states wryly, just staring at him. Jasper takes a moment to look around at where here is before continuing. Large, featureless white void, big thing on the horizon to the left and right, no close between the two of them. And if they were to each hold out their arms, they could clasp claws at most. Okay, odd, but he can work with this. I don't have that kind of time. He dismisses the accusation. That is because you insist on doing literally everything you can all at once, Emmanuel notes. Then he dramatically raises a claw and suddenly they're both dressed in business casual with a pair of comfortable chairs between them. Still, you're here now and clearly going to solve this now, so let us solve the problem. Certainly, but first let's define it, Jasper says, sitting comfortably into the chair conjured nearest to him. Emmanuel lowers himself and chuckles. You already have a full understanding of what is occurring. I am Emmanuel Skitterway, son of Dr. Morgana Skitterway, and I am bleeding back into you. I was slowly bleeding into you, but now you have accelerated the process. Am I going to remain myself? Oh yes, we are becoming one. You are not becoming me. I am not becoming you. We are one being already. It is just we are not whole yet. I'm afraid I don't fully understand. I see. Well, to put it as plainly as possible, you are gaining my memories, my emotional connections, and everything that makes me myself, without losing anything that makes you yourself, Emmanuel explains, and Jasper nods. He can sense a sort of honesty, but he needs to keep poking until he's completely sure. How did this happen? It's not every day that you're part of a resurrection, or would reincarnation be more appropriate? He asks, and Emmanuel nods appreciatively. It is rare indeed. I will explain why in a moment. As to the how of this situation, it is a variety of factors. Yet the most significant contributing factor was when you reached out to speak with your mental brother Horus. You touched not only my mother as well, but myself. Since then, I have been slowly becoming one with you. Also, I believe this is closer to reincarnation than resurrection. Resurrection implies it is merely the same person again. Reincarnation on the other claw assumes that changes have occurred in some capacity. I see. So what makes this so rare? I assume that if it was well known enough to be more than extremely unusual, then your mother would have at least attempted to resurrect you. Yes, it's often impossible. There are certain predatory beings that dine on the connections and, for lack of a better term, anatomical portions of a spirit that are required for both communication with the dead and with resurrection. It does no harm to the actual soul. Think of these portions to be akin to a vehicle or some kind of climbing equipment needed to travel between the two. Does it cause any damage to the actual soul? Jasper asks, and Emmanuel looks uncertain. There are certain limitations on what we are about to do. I recall nearly nothing of the afterlife, even though I am not yet alive. Memories formed in the afterlife remain in the afterlife. There are also multiple afterlives. I do believe I encountered individuals who were ravaged by these predators. However, I cannot say for certain. I see. With these things attacking the tethers, for lack of a better term, it's not surprising that resurrection is thought of as impossible. But why aren't they here now? If these ravenous things are the whole reason why the divide between life and death is so strong, then where are they? Jasper asks, and Emmanuel extends his arms and points to both horizons. Jasper glances each way before giving the other self an inquisitive look. Because a super predator is unconscious nearby, this area is regarded as its territory, and they avoid it. It is in this place, and perhaps nowhere else, that this can be happening. Emmanuel states, and Jasper regards both horizons again. It's a single creature? I thought it was landscape for lack of a better term. He asks, wondering about the sheer logistics of trying to deal with such a creature. If it's on a continental scale, it is a single titanic being. Normally, they dwell out in space alone and feed on the axiom energies. I have learned that the tethers between the living and dead are effectively a preferred portion of their diets. Think candy to a meal of filling, but plain foods. Emmanuel states, and Jasper nods. So these things can be hurt, perhaps even killed and driven away. Yes, but we do not know the ramifications of such a thing. Without these predators around, it may very well be possible for the dead to self-resurrect, which may sound excellent in concept, but the implications are enormous and far-reaching. Emmanuel warns him, and Jasper nods. Not to mention that's only if, big IF, something like self-resurrection has no negatives attached. If it does, we could be looking at an undead apocalypse, potentially on a galactic scale. Planets covered in the living dead. I did not expect that to be a topic when we began this conversation. Emmanuel notes with a stunned look on his face. Jasper points to his left with his right claw and his right with his left. We're speaking, one incarnation to another, in the realm of spirits with an impossibly large horror on both horizons. It would take quite a bit of work to make the situation any more absurd than it already is, Jasper says in an amused tone. Emmanuel chuckles a bit in response. True, very true. Thankfully, there is no horde of suitors lining up to try and win our claws in marriage in here. Oh, that would just be the cherry on top, wouldn't it? Jasper asks with a grin. So, this is happening. I don't stop being me, and I get your extensive education out of it. Also, I get to talk down Dr. Skitterway. Oh my goodness, we have not even spoken about her. There's no real way to. You remember your mother, but all I know her as is distilled crazy coming out of a radio. Yes, that is true. This is going to be enormously awkward. Oh, like I'm not ready for that after I dethroned and adopted a queen, or the fact it worked so well I'm planning to do it again with a holy empress. Jasper remarks, and Emmanuel groans into his claws. Your mental processes confuse and frighten me in ways I can scarcely comprehend. He moans, and Jasper just laughs in response. Emmanuel just watches him for a moment before nodding and sitting a bit more formally. I must say, the stories we shall have for the other side will be much more numerous and incredible. Yes, Jasper says, holding out his right claw. The intent is clear. I thought you would be the one nervous about this. Is this what it means to be undaunted? Something like that, but not all of it, Jasper says. And after a moment, Emmanuel's claw clasps his. The headache is entirely psychosomatic. He pushes it down as he stands up, more himself than before. He remembers how to perceive color from his antenna. It adds an incredible depth and appreciation for his surroundings, the tiny imperfections unavailable in a mechanically cleaned and maintained ship, something he rarely saw as Emmanuel. What did you just do? One of the midwives asks from behind him, and Jasper smiles. I regained myself. I was missing some rather important pieces. You accomplished all you've done while injured? Injured? No. Incomplete would be more honest, he says before taking in a deep, appreciative breath. Incomplete? Yes, incomplete. I'm uncertain how better to explain it without sounding overly grandiose. The singular man upon a world, the self-made warlord, king, and champion of the people who descended from the stars, the man whom doubled in height and grew hundreds of pounds of raw muscle in the span of a month, thinks this next bit is too absurd, she asks incredibly. I went from a living tribute to a dead man to the dead man resurrected. Emmanuel Skitterway lives again, though I still remain Jasper. What? I was merely a copy of someone, but his soul has come back from the afterlife and joined with me. That, how? She asks, and he shrugs. I reached out to the stars to seek help from the man whose mind I was a copy of. I awoke the spirit of my past self as I did so. He was speaking to me tonight, and I spoke to him directly. He and I are now one. He lives again, and I am complete. I am whole and greater than I was before. The immense mind and learning of Emmanuel with the fierce fury of Jasper. The mind. I am a learned man, a scholar. I gained such standing in my last life as Emmanuel. I have it once more, he says as he finally opens his eyes. Now, is there something the matter? Do you have any idea how changed the axiom was around you? It was only for a moment, but reality echoed it was. It was so strange. And only you have come up to speak to me? Jasper asks, noting that everyone is keeping a fair distance away. You do scary things. You're a good person, but you don't do things small. Fair enough, he says. I was speaking with Emmanuel, halfway between the world of the living and the afterlife. That's impossible. Par for the course with me, it would seem, Jasper remarks with a grin. He then frowns and notices the slight discoloration around her neckline. Are you all right? Your chest tuft is somewhat discolored. How did you... There's an itch at times, she notes. I think you're lacking fiber and protein. I know you're an herbivore, but small amounts of meat will be a blessing. Fish in particular, if well prepared in a rooty salad, will clear that up. He remarks, and she blinks. Have you gained the skills of a doctor by simply meditating for less than a minute? Somewhat, he confesses, and she sighs before looking upward as if seeking strength from the heavens. Every time I think I understand this creature, there is a greater and greater level of absurdity. In all fairness, my mother was dedicated to seeing me have the best possible education in the galaxy. By the time most children were learning basic sums, I was dabbling in advanced mathematics, medicine, chemistry, and physics, Jasper says fondly. The difference between Horace's childhood and Emmanuel's was like night and day. Horace was from a large family that had enough warmth for everyone. Emmanuel was the single warm point to a cold woman. By comparison, Horace was outright feral. Simultaneously, Emmanuel had neither control of nor even the concept of chance or chaos in his life. Insanity or not, will you be using this newly returned knowledge to help? Of course. I'll need a copy of your records in order to actually understand what level you're all at as an organization, but after that, I can easily offer not only advice but teach more advanced concepts. My license to teach is no doubt expired, but it's at least several centuries more advanced than anything in your own records, regardless of the technological plateaus. A what? There's a certain point where it's very, very hard to improve things, be it yourself or others. This is called a plateau, so named because it is akin to reaching just such a formation when climbing a mountain of infinite size. And you're going to use it to help us. What else is it good for? He asks in a slightly affronted tone. Well, you could rule and, oh, you clever monster, you already do. You're expanding your influence, but why? No one else seems able to do a proper job of it. To lead a people is to ensure that they have the best in mind for them. Many on this world are simply not in a position to do that. So if no one else can do the job, I will. And what's the job done properly to you? To me, that would be the world at least at the level of stability and prosperity that it would have had if the nest had never crashed. I would see you all in crystal spires with overflowing larders and hope unending for the future. How do we deserve that? She asks in an awed tone, and Jasper's eyebrow goes up. Why is she acting like she's unworthy? Is there some kind of self-critical cultural phenomenon going on? Deserve has nothing to do with it. As far as I'm concerned, you're long owed this. Chin up, there will be prosperity and peace upon Lacrin. I promise you that.